Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A quick note before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our speaker, Ankit Saxena, Global Head of People Insights and HR Technology, PPG. We're excited to have Ankit with us for a keynote presentation titled People Power, Strategies for People Analytics Success. Welcome, Ankit. Over to you.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Argyle, for inviting me for this presentation. I'm definitely looking forward for this session to talk about the strategies that are necessary for building a people analytics function to be successful. Just for my background, before I go into the presentation, I currently head the People Insights and the HR Technology function within the PPG. Overall, I have about 16 years of experience. In the past 10 years, I have been into the People Insights side of the work, which is related to the people analytics, technology, and the artificial intelligence. With that, I will quickly move into the presentation today. The presentation, the way I have divided, is basically covering 4 key aspects today. One, which I'm going to do today, is talk about at a very high level, if you are setting up a people insights function or people analytics function, what are some of the principles that you need to follow? Then in the presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the fundamentals, how the people analytics functions evolve in different organizations. And I know that at this stage, many organizations are focusing on the people analytics capabilities within their organization. And that's something which is pretty good for those organizations which are still thinking about why people analytics is needed. That's something which I will cover in the next slide. Then after that, I will give some of the use cases related to the people analytics, which I have experienced through my past organizations, plus also what I have heard through the colleagues that I have worked in the past or interacted at different forums with them. And then lastly, I will conclude this presentation with one of the most important aspects, which all of us are currently hearing, is the artificial intelligence and how people analytics and artificial intelligence work hand in hand to really deliver value to the organizations that you work in. So with that, the very first thing which I'll talk about is the data and analytics. What are the key principles of the people analytics? What I did is that firstly, I kind of just narrated out what exactly is the employee life cycle. And it kind of starts with the attract to the retire kind of a situation for any organization from the employee's perspective. Now, there is a lot of data, a lot of information that we collect from the different touch points within this entire life cycle of the employee. And those data points are available maybe through many technologies within the organization. So that's where I think it is important for me to talk about what are some of the principles when you are building people analytics function or storing the data from the employees and making any decisions based on them, what are the principles that you need to follow? So to first start with, I would say that there are 3 key things that I have identified through my experience and based on the conversations that I had with a lot of people in the people analytics space are the 3 things. One is the data strategy. What is going to be your governance and what exactly is your process looks like? Now, the first piece is one of the most important and close in terms of how you build up the foundation for any organization from the PA perspective. Now, many organizations, as you know, have shifted from having different kind of a tools and system, and they have been trying in the past to build a more central source of truth for the organization. And in that sequence, if you know that many organizations are looking for human capital management systems, which kind of offer the entire life cycle of the employees. And that's where the data is stored. So that's one part of the people analytics success is that whatever the data that we are using, there has to be a one source of truth to collect the different kind of an information. Many organizations also still find struggle and difficulties in kind of making that push towards one centralized source of truth. And in order to address that, what I have experienced in my past, in my tenure with different organizations is that there has been always a push to create this centralized data repository. Now, this centralized data repository is important because a lot of information that we collect from one system may not be good enough to tell you the end-to-end story. And that's where I think a lot of focus the people analytics teams put in towards building that centralized data repository, either through the SEM tool that they have it available, or they try to build it outside the system when they are using a different business intelligence tool like Power BI, or if they are using Tableau or many other systems that are available. And through that, they are able to create a very centralized data repository. Now, the other piece also related to the data strategy in the PA space is important, is about maintaining the high data quality. And I think many organizations struggle with respect to that. One of the main reasons is that the processes that they have built in the organization, especially if you look at the global organizations, because of different rules and regulations, there's a lot of complexity which exists, which leads to the quality of the data deteriorate over a period of time. And that is why it is important that the PA partners work with different COEs or Center of Excellence, whether it is talent, rewards, or many other departments, just to ensure that there are very clearly laid out processes which kind of talk about end-to-end view, what are the touch points, who are going to be looking at this information, so that the data which is being collected throughout the process remains at a high quality. For any success of the people analytics function, the quality of the data does matter quite a lot. So these are the three principles within the data strategy that needs to be followed. Of course, there are many other things which are available, but these are top of the mind that comes from the data strategy point of view. The other piece for the people analytics function is important is the governance piece of it. And when I talk about governance, of course, there are three key things that come under the governance. One, what exactly are the definitions? Is the organization talking in the same language? And this has really evolved over a period of time. I think when I started my career 10 years back in the space of the people analytics, I always struggled to see that the people were talking in a very different language from one person to the another, one department to the another. And those challenges are required to be taken into account and make sure that we all speak in the same language when we are talking about any KPIs, when we are talking about any specific field related to the people data that we are collecting. The second piece, which is important from the governance perspective, is that how people analytics kind of service the different requests. Is there any robust view of all the requests that are coming to the people analytics function, what they are looking in, what they are trying to support, and why they are doing it? Those are some of the important questions. And eventually it ties back to the return on investment. In the world of today, we all know that there are limited resources, limited budget. So how do you align your resources with respect to that? It ties back to your return on investment of that. So it is important that there is a very robust governance around how the organizations or the people analytics functions take the request from the different department and what they are pushing as part of their vision, strategy, and the priorities as well. Then the third piece, which is also an important principle for the people analytics function to succeed, is around the processes. Because as I mentioned, that a lot of data quality issues come from the fact that many organizations are not creating very simple processes, but they have created such a complexity around the process, which leads to bad data and eventually bad reporting and eventually bad decisions out of it. So it is important that we clearly lay out what are the global processes, what is the effectiveness of them, and what exactly is the as-is process. And if the as-is process is not working, what the ideal process looks like, and where the gaps we need to address it. It is also important that we call out very clearly what are the interdependencies of the processes as well with respect to the department. Because if there is a talent process, does it has any implication with respect to the reward, or whether it has any implication with respect to the DEI? So those are the factors which needs to be taken into account properly before having a high degree of data quality, before having a robust principles around how you build your people analytics function. So in a sense, if you want to have a successful people analytics function, these are the three things that you need to really evaluate as you start in the journey of the people analytics in any given organization. With that, I will move to the next slide, which again talks about an evolution of any people analytics function to be successful in any organization. And I think I have been fortunate enough with few organizations to build the people analytics function right from the scratch. And when I say right from the scratch, is basically there was hardly any kind of a data points or hardly any kind of a reporting that was available. What I've noticed is that the first and the primary purpose of the people analytics function could be just reporting, simply just people getting the people on the similar language, having a common definition, talk about what exactly is your headcount report and what is exactly is your termination report and new hires, so on and so forth. So that's basic reporting is a kind of a very fundamental step towards building and evolving your people analytics function. Then, of course, the next stage for any organization is to build robust dashboards, because what we have been providing through the reporting may not be giving a clear view whether we are losing the people quickly, what exactly the time to fill, are we having too many open positions, what exactly is our vacancy rate, and those kind of KPIs which are tied to the business growth and development. That's where the dashboards could be a significant value for any organization. And I have given some examples what exactly the dashboards could look like and what material or KPIs they might contain. The very next stage, what I have included in here is after once you have established a foundation through your reporting and dashboarding, the organization get involved into some sort of a descriptive analytics piece of it. And when I talk about descriptive analytics, it primarily revolves around doing a deep dive. If there is an attrition issue, why exactly it is taking place? What are the reasons people leaving the organizations? Is there any kind of a remediation action that could be planned to retain the people in the organization, whether it is a retention bonus, whether it is internal mobility? What are the other factors that could be taken into account, and building the context around that is part of the descriptive analytics. But it is also, again, a very fundamental point when people analytics function is evolving in given organization. Then the last two pieces, which I still find that not many organizations has evolved to. However, there has been some success in stories that we have heard about the predictive and the prescriptive part of the analytics. In terms of the predictive piece, again, I will say using the machine learning techniques, there are opportunities which you can actually predict the future, whether it is in terms of the demand planning. What exactly is your going to be forecast for the hires, or what exactly is going to be your attrition predictions that is going to happen? And that's something which we can use different predictive models to build out those hypotheses and kind of test what is the future prediction related to them, whether it is related to the quality of the hire as well. So these are some of the examples from the predictive analytics that still, I believe, not many organizations have reached to that level, but some have started working and some have already succeeded in that as well. And then finally, the prescriptive analytics, and that's where I think I will touch upon a little bit towards the end of the presentation when I'll go into the AI piece, how the people analytics is doing and collaborate with the AI related models and go into the details of it. But the prescriptive analytics is a prime example where you can, as an organization, use artificial intelligence for predicting a lot of things in the future, like career pathing. What exactly is going to happen with respect to the learning path that you're going to have within the organization? With respect to, as an employee, you build your development plan, and can the system predict or advise you in terms of what kind of a learning path you should choose based on your development plan? So these are some of the examples that can be utilized in terms of building and evolving your people analytics function. Again, I will reiterate that there are 5 stages that I've seen so far in my experience, which really takes the people analytics function a journey over a period of time, starting from the reporting to the prescriptive analytics, where you go through dashboarding, descriptive, predictive, and finally to the prescriptive analytics, which really creates a value for any given organization. But at the crux of it, again, the bottom line that remains for all these implementation is the people, process, and technology. As you can understand that all these things tie back to your resource alignment, as well as what the budgets are being sanctioned for your function to really implement those changes and have the capability and setup of the processes to allow your function to succeed from the people analytics point of view. With that, actually, I will move in terms of talking about some of the use cases that I have seen within the people analytics. As you can see in this one, I have tried to capture some of the very high level use cases, which basically revolves around the entire life cycle of the employee, whether it is from the talent acquisition perspective, learning development, internal mobility, retention, survey research, or a hypothesis testing, which is completely coming from different part of the businesses or from the HRPP to really investigate further to see if there is an impact or is there any kind of a factor which is driving the other one. So these are some of the examples which I have tried to capture in here. But I will touch upon a couple of interesting views that I have seen in the past and in my experience, which are really valuable for the different organizations in really delivering the value. One of the examples which I'll give is around the learning and development. as all of us are pretty much aware that a lot of people create their development plan in the organization. But in terms of the execution, do we really see a significant push? How the people are really utilizing their development plan in terms of their progress? What I have seen some of the organization can do is that they can connect their learning system with respect to this development plan. So for example, if I am an employee, I'm looking to build a development plan and I say that I want to build my skill sets on the storytelling. I want to build my skill sets on the data science, or I want to build my skill sets from the communication point of view. There are definitely a lot of programs, a lot of pathways, a lot of information which is available in the learning system. But if your system allows you to kind of look upon an employee and say that these are the 3 commitments that you wanted to build on your skills over a period of time, but if you have not done any kind of a learning in past 6 months or 8 months, then can there be a notification that could be initiated automatically and sent to the manager and also the employee that these are the opportunities that you have and you haven't done any kind of a training, which if you invest some time in terms of building your skill sets over a period of time, you can choose from these courses, whether it is storytelling, communication, or whether it is data science related any courses. So that's how the AI and the people analytics can connect multiple systems and create value for the managers and the employee to take action in a given time frame about their career growth in the organization. Then, of course, there are many other things which we can do. Another example which I will I will tell, which I've seen in my experience, is around the survey research. And through this survey research, actually, as you can see, that there are a lot of information that is available. And if we are able to use modeling techniques, that's where we can actually figure out what are the different variations that we see among the employees who are unhappy or the people who are moderately happy or very happy with the organizations. And when I talk about the surveys, always many organizations are falling in a pit that they kind of evaluate surveys very individualistically. They sometimes look upon only the engagement survey, or they sometimes look upon just the candidate or hiring manager survey or exit survey very, very separately or in silos. There is an opportunity which I would like all of you to think about it once you go back to your organizations, is that how you can actually integrate all the surveys from end to end and think about the employees that joined your organization, what were their reactions at the time when they started the organization, and as the time progressed, what was their engagement scores, and then eventually when they left the organization, what changed for them, and that's why they are quitting the organization. So that's where I think when you look upon, rather than an isolation, an end-to-end view of your surveys, it can help you kind of drive a lot of value for the organization and figure out the prime reasons why, because of which the people are leaving the organization. And then finally, I will also talk about things around the hypothesis testing. And that's where I believe a very good examples which I can give you. A couple of the things that I have noticed is that we build a lot of programs in the organization, but often we fail to understand whether there is a high degree of impact with respect to those programs. And I will tell you that there are many programs related to the learning. There are a lot of initiatives which are happening from the recognition point of view. There are a lot of initiatives that takes place from the talent management, but are they really driving the value for the organization? Are they bringing the kind of the impact that we envisioned at the time when we launched those programs? And that's where I think it is critical that the people analytics team not only just sit in their place and they say that, okay, once somebody comes to me, only then I will kind of research it, but they should be very proactive in kind of working with respect to the different stakeholders and try to figure out when these programs are launched, what is exactly the outcome that you want to drive. If you are launching a recognition program, for example, what exactly is the intent that you want to drive from there, whether it is the retention or internal mobility? And if over a period of time, do you see really that recognition program driving the value from the retention or internal mobility perspective, then continue, otherwise take a decision not to continue. And those kind of a business decision can really help save the organization or augment a given kind of a program in the organization. So that's where the people analytics could be really hard hitting in terms of creating the value. The other example which I can give you is from the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I often believe is an area where a lot of push has come across the organizations. And some of the examples which I have seen and I have kind of heard from the different people when I have interacted with them is around the fact that many organizations are kind of looking through the initiatives that they are bringing to get the value from the diversity point of view. But the question is that, is there an opportunity to look an end-to-end view from the data perspective, whether there is a retention of any kind of a race or ethnicity or gender is very different compared to the hiring that it looks like. Then it comes down to the fact is that in the hiring process, are we seeing some sort of a differentiation among the people who are coming from one race versus the other, or the gender? Are there any drop-off that varies from one group to the other, and where the opportunity and what exactly is causing it? Once you kind of navigate through those challenges, it helps us kind of drive and figure out what actions or remediation plans that we can take to improve or retain, or improve the hiring or retain the people from the different races and the gender. So that's where it can give you a good push from the perspective of improving the diversity, equity, and inclusion scores within your organization. One last piece on the inclusion piece before I move to the next slide, which I'll give, is that there are a lot of programs that run across different organizations, but it is also important, again, to really evaluate critically those programs, whether those programs over a period of time really create value or help the organization move the needle from the diversity, equity, and inclusion point of view. If they are just checking the box, they are not good enough. So that is important that you build a very robust and critical evaluation of those programs if they are really moving the needle from the DEI perspective in your organization. So these are some of the use cases which I wanted to go through, but the last slide, which is, I believe, is one of the most innovative and the most important area that all of us are kind of moving in the recent times, is the artificial intelligence. And I think now these days, any people analytics presentation cannot be complete until we talk about artificial intelligence. And for that, I will just go to the next slide, which basically gives you a kind of a very high level view. And I know that a lot of organizations are in different stages of the artificial intelligence. If I may say that different organizations are in the test, learn, and invest kind of in position within the artificial intelligence journey. Now, one thing which is critical to know is that artificial intelligence has been thrown out in many ways. And sometimes the people just say generative AI. Some people say chat GPT, and then people get confused. Okay, what exactly am I talking about? What exactly are the differences? So in this actually slide, I have tried to capture firstly at a very high level, what exactly is the artificial intelligence? What is the generative AI? What is the chat GPT? And I think important piece is that these all tools can help you and try and kind of automating a lot of repetitive tasks, can help enhance and augment the work that the different set of the people in the organization are doing. And for example, I mean, if you look upon the chat GPT, right? So the definition is very clear that it's a chat bot, which is a conversational. So if you have any kind of a question, if you give some loose parameters and you try to figure out, okay, if I have to write a JD, right? So these are the fundamental points which I need to insert into it. And that JD will come up very quickly through the chat GPT. So that's where the real value comes in from there, rather than you thinking about, okay, what should I write it? What are the attributes should I include in the job description? So those are some of the benefit that the chat GPT can offer. But I think it is important that, firstly, the applications of the AI, where exactly the artificial intelligence can really elevate the game. I have tried to capture some of the examples here on the right-hand side, which is like generating the job descriptions, supporting the staff response augmentation, right? So in the service management, you have a lot of people who are kind of responding to the request. Are there opportunities to really automate some of those works and can have a person who can really kind of answer automatically, rather than a conversational bot can answer your questions more efficiently without having an intervention from the human. And same goes with the learning and development and talent marketplace. But one thing which I will say, it is important for many organizations when they are looking to implement the artificial intelligence solutions to think critically about 4 key things. One, why really you want to implement the AI? What is the value are you going to generate out of it, right? So what is your vision? Why do you want to do it? And then the second thing is that what will be the outcome, right? So you cannot just say that because it looks cool, it is in the media all over the place, it has highest point in terms of the traction across the internet that, oh, it is going to bring some value to the organization. But it's important to be very specific and targeted in terms of the response that you want to get out of it, right? What value that you're going to generate. Then, of course, there are a couple of very important things. One is more from the risk perspective. If you are implementing AI, as you can understand, it is collecting in information from the internet, which could create a lot of biases, a lot of regulatory risk, a lot of litigations, and many other things. So it is important to balance those risks when you are implementing or using or thinking about implementing the artificial intelligence in your processes. So that's the another piece of the work that it is imperative to look upon. And then finally, what are the governing principles that you're going to set up within the organization? It could be from the legal perspective, it could be from the compliance perspective. Could be that you are going to utilize only for a specific task and targeted audience, and many other aspects of the governing principles that you might require to really evaluate critically before you think about implementing the AI. But it is important for me in this presentation to touch upon the artificial intelligence, because this is the buzzword of the town, and everyone from the people analytics have been talking about, oh, how can I use different tools to summarize my large data sets? How can I use to create summaries? How can I use to create the stories for my presentation, and so on and so forth? So that's where I think there's a lot of attention, and I believe that it will be a remiss from my side if I don't touch upon the artificial intelligence in the people analytics space at a very high level. So that's why I have captured it here. But that's it about my presentation. I'm happy to share this. And with that, I will quickly move on to the questions that have been posed. So just give me a second. So the question is that what size of the firm, how many employees does it require for people data analytics to start to make sense versus cost of such initiatives? I think it is a very great question, because I think a lot of organizations are thinking it is just as a cost initiative. I think from my perspective, I would say there is no size limit. It depends upon the priority and the state and evolution of your organization, right? So even if you are a 100 employee firm, or whether you are a 10,000 employee firm, what exactly is the intent? And if you have a very targeted outcomes in your mind, then it makes sense to really push in. But always think about what the vision is going to be for the organization, right? So if you believe that the HR function is optimally working in a smaller organization, and there are no efficiency or no reporting is needed, then probably we are at miss. I believe that the size of the organization really doesn't matter when it comes to setting up the people analytics facilities. But eventually, I think any function for that matter has to prove that there is a return on investment. And that's where I say always it is important for anyone or any function or any team to set up is be very critical. What exactly is the outcome in the short, medium, and the long term that you're going to deliver? And based on that, depending upon the outcomes and the ROI of those initiatives, you should take it up. Because I think sometimes we can be myopic that, oh, is it going to deliver in the next 12 months? Maybe not, but can the value be substantial in 24 months to 60 months time period? So those initiatives need to be critically evaluated and think about whether it makes sense in the long or medium term to create value for the organization. So size is not really important. It is more about the vision, the direction of the organization, and whether they really believe that this can deliver the value in the medium to the long run. The next question is, what are some of the most common yet valuable people data analytics? So I think, yeah, so in terms of the people data analytics, what are the most common yet valuable? Yeah, so the thing is that actually for all the people data analytics, I think the things which I will say always, think about critically from the people, process, and the technology point of view. These are the three most common, but in any analytics function, forget about just the people data analytics, but any analytics function you go in, you will find these are the three most important things to be considered. But again, any organization, depending upon the size of the organization and the level of the investment that they are willing to do it, the size of the analytics function could be determining the factor of the outcome and the value that you generate from the function. So I believe still the people, process, and the technology are the three most common things for the people data analytics function as well. Yes. The next question is that this is the last one, knowing that we are almost at time, is that our satisfaction survey is still a relevant way to collect data, or are there better ways to measure employee experiences? Yes, there are definitely the satisfaction surveys, as most of the organization that still go about it, but still this is a kind of an evolving field, and I know that more organizations are shifting towards more having a continuous surveys rather than just using the one-time surveys in the organization. And I think there's been a high degree of push from a lot of organizations is around the passive data that they are collecting from the different sources about how the organization or the employees are feeling about the policies, about the changes that are happening in the organization. So I believe that, yes, they still remain as one of the important, but they are not the most important. I think the organizations are definitely shifting towards passive data and a continuous listening over a period of time. So yeah, I mean, these are some of my responses to the questions that have been posed. So I'm glad that I could be able to attend this session and provide my inputs. With that, I'll hand it over to Nick.
Wow. Thanks again, Ankit, for such an insightful keynote. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle HR Leadership Forum, Workforce Resilience in the Age of Disruption. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content, and have a great rest of your day.